Here's a strong, suspenseful hook for your documentary. Asterisk, in the quiet town of Ridgeway Heights, a single murder would unravel a decade-long web of secrets, disappearances, and hidden obsessions. What began as a shocking discovery in an abandoned house would reveal the most twisted crime the town had ever seen. One that no one could have imagined, and few would survive uncovering. Asterisk, if you want, I can also give 3 alternative hooks that are punchy and perfect for a YouTube thumbnail and opening narration to instantly grab viewers. Do you want me to do that? Ridgeway Heights was the kind of town where people felt safe leaving their doors unlocked and children rode their bikes through the streets until the sun disappeared behind the houses. Nothing serious ever seemed to happen there. Most residents believed the town was far removed from the kind of crime that filled news headlines in big cities. That sense of security vanished early one cold morning when a jogger running along a quiet road near the edge of town noticed something lying near the entrance of an abandoned property. At first, it looked like a pile of trash left behind by trespassers, but as the jogger moved closer, the shape became clearer. It was a body. Within minutes, police cars filled the empty street, and officers began sealing off the area with yellow tape. The victim was identified later that day as 32-year-old Daniel Mercer, a local resident who worked for a small technology company in town. Investigators quickly noticed details that made the scene feel strange. Daniel's wallet and phone were missing, which suggested robbery, yet his clothes were neat and there were no obvious signs of a struggle nearby. Even more unusual was the location itself. The abandoned house had been empty for nearly 15 years. Windows were boarded up, the yard was overgrown, and most people avoided the place completely. When officers searched the property, they expected to find nothing but dust and broken furniture. Instead, deep inside the dark basement, one detective discovered a small worn notebook hidden beneath a loose wooden board. Inside were several pages filled with names and dates written in hurried handwriting. Daniel Mercer's name appeared on the final page. The discovery of the notebook immediately shifted the direction of the investigation. Instead of looking like a simple robbery, the case now felt deliberate and carefully planned. Detectives studied every page of the worn notebook, trying to understand why a list of names had been hidden in the basement of an abandoned house. The writing was messy and uneven, as if the person who wrote it had been in a hurry. Some names had dates beside them, while others were circled or marked with strange symbols that made no obvious sense. One by one, investigators began tracking down the people listed inside. Some had moved away from Ridgeway Heights years earlier, while others still lived quietly in the same neighborhoods. Most of them were shocked when detectives showed up at their doors asking questions. Nearly all claimed they had never heard of Daniel Mercer and had no idea why their names would appear in a hidden notebook connected to a murder. While reviewing the list, one name quickly caught the attention of investigators: Olivia Grant. Unlike the others, Olivia had a small connection to the abandoned house. Years ago, she had lived on the same street and had once reported suspicious activity around the property late at night. When detectives tried to contact her, they discovered something unusual. Olivia no longer lived in town. According to neighbors, she had packed up and left suddenly just weeks earlier without explaining where she was going. No forwarding address, no warning, and no contact with anyone she once knew. At the same time, forensic experts examined the notebook more closely. The fingerprints found on several pages did not belong to Daniel Mercer. Someone else had been writing those names. As investigators continued to search through Daniel Mercer's apartment, they discovered that his life had been far more complicated than anyone in town realized. At first, his home appeared ordinary. The furniture was simple, the rooms were clean, and nothing seemed out of place. But when detectives opened his laptop, they uncovered dozens of folders filled with notes, timelines, and documents that revealed Daniel had been quietly conducting his own investigation for months. The file showed that Daniel had been studying a series of strange incidents connected to Ridgeway Heights. Some involved people who had suddenly moved away without explanation. Others were brief missing person reports that had been quickly closed when the individuals were later found. Each case on its own seemed unimportant, but Daniel believed they were all connected. He had created detailed maps of the town, marking the locations where each incident had taken place. When detectives looked closely, they noticed something unsettling. Many of the events were located near the same abandoned house where Daniel's body had been discovered. Daniel's notes also revealed that he had recently started contacting several of the people whose names appeared in the mysterious notebook. One of them was Olivia Grant. According to his records, she had been one of the few people willing to speak with him about strange activity near the property years earlier. The deeper investigators looked into Daniel's files, the clearer it became that he had uncovered something disturbing hidden beneath the quiet image of Ridgeway Heights. His research pointed toward a pattern that stretched back more than 15 years. And it seemed Daniel had gotten very close to discovering the truth before with Daniel Mercer's research pointing toward the past, investigators decided to reopen one of the town's oldest unsolved mysteries. 15 years earlier, the Holloway family had vanished from the same abandoned house where Daniel's body had been found. At the time, the disappearance had shocked the community. Mark Holloway, his wife Laura, and their teenage son Ethan had simply disappeared overnight without leaving any clear explanation. Police searched the house and surrounding area for weeks, but found no evidence of what had happened to them. Back then, the case slowly faded from attention. With no bodies and no strong leads, investigators eventually classified the disappearance as unresolved. Over the years, the house was boarded up and left to decay, becoming a place most residents avoided. Now, Daniel's notes suggested that the Holloway case might be the key to everything. When detectives reviewed old police reports, they noticed several strange details that had been overlooked at the time. Neighbors had reported seeing unfamiliar vehicles parked near the house late at night, during the weeks before the family vanished. Others claimed they saw lights on inside the house long after the Holloways were believed to be gone. Daniel had also discovered information about Mark Holloway's job. Mark had worked for a small private security company that operated in several nearby towns. The company had quietly shut down a few years after the family disappeared, and its records were incomplete. More troubling was the fact that several former employees from that same company appeared in the notebook found in the basement. The pattern Daniel Mercer had been chasing was beginning to look real. The investigation took an unexpected turn when detectives finally managed to locate Olivia Grant. After weeks of searching through records and following small leads, they discovered she had moved to another state and was living under a slightly different name. When authorities contacted her, she appeared nervous but agreed to speak with investigators. What she revealed added a disturbing layer to the already complicated case. Years earlier, when Olivia still lived near the abandoned house, she had noticed unusual activity late at night. One evening she looked out from her window and saw a man walking toward the house carrying heavy bags. The man moved slowly but confidently, as if he was familiar with the place. Olivia watched as he disappeared through the back entrance that most people believed had been permanently sealed. The sight unsettled her enough that she reported it to local police. At the time, officers briefly checked the property but found nothing unusual and dismissed her concerns as a misunderstanding. The house remained empty, and life in Ridgeway Heights continued as normal. Months before the murder, Daniel Mercer had contacted Olivia after finding her old statement in archived police reports. He wanted to know every detail she remembered about that night. After speaking with him, Olivia began to feel uneasy. Soon afterward, she started receiving strange, anonymous messages warning her to stop discussing the abandoned house. Frightened by the sudden attention, she decided to leave town without telling anyone. But Olivia remembered one important detail about the man she had seen years earlier. He had been wearing a uniform from the same security company where Mark Holloway once worked. After Olivia Grant described the uniform she had seen that night, investigators returned to the records of the old security company where Mark Holloway had worked. The company had shut down years earlier, but fragments of employment files still existed in archived databases. Detectives carefully reviewed every name connected to the business, comparing them with the list found inside the mysterious notebook. One name quickly stood out: Victor Kane. Unlike many former employees who had moved away, Victor still lived quietly in Ridgeway Heights. According to records, he had worked night shifts for the company around the same time the Holloway family disappeared. His history appeared ordinary at first, but investigators soon noticed several long gaps in his employment timeline that were never explained. Police began quietly watching Victor's routine. He worked as a night guard at a warehouse outside town and spent most of his time alone. Neighbors described him as distant but polite, someone who kept to himself and rarely spoke with anyone. With enough suspicion building, detectives obtained a warrant to search his small home. What they found inside changed the entire investigation. Hidden in a locked storage room were several boxes filled with newspaper clippings, photographs, and personal belongings that appeared to belong to people listed in Daniel Mercer's notebook. Some of the items were decades old. Others belonged to individuals who had disappeared or suddenly left town years earlier. Among the papers were maps of Ridgeway Heights marked with circles and dates, similar to the ones found on Daniel's laptop. The evidence suggested something far darker than a single crime. Victor Kane had been quietly watching the town for years. Victor Kane's arrest sent shockwaves through Ridgeway Heights. For years, he had lived quietly among the residents, unnoticed and unremarkable. Now investigators were uncovering evidence that suggested he had been secretly collecting information about people in the town for more than a decade. The boxes found in his home were carefully organized, each containing photographs, newspaper clippings, addresses, and small personal items connected to different individuals. At first, detectives believed they had finally identified the person responsible for Daniel Mercer's murder and possibly several other disappearances. But as they continued searching Victor's home, they uncovered something that complicated the case even further. Hidden behind a loose panel in the storage room was another notebook. It looked almost identical to the one discovered in the abandoned house basement. The pages were filled with even more names, far more than investigators had seen before. Some of the names belonged to people already listed in Daniel's research, but many others were completely new. What made the discovery more disturbing was that several of those names belonged to respected members of the Ridgeway Heights community. Local business owners, longtime residents, and even individuals who had helped with town events appeared in the list. Victor Kane refused to explain the meaning behind the notebook, but investigators noticed something unusual in the markings beside certain names. Some were circled, others were crossed out, and a few were connected by arrows that created strange patterns across the pages. It suggested a system that investigators still did not fully understand, and it raised a chilling possibility. Victor Kane may not have been working alone. The trial of Victor Kane revealed disturbing details about the extent of his secret activities. Evidence presented in court confirmed that he had been monitoring and collecting information on people in Ridgeway Heights for years. Investigators linked him to several disappearances, and the pattern of his meticulous record-keeping suggested that the abandoned house had been more than just a hiding place. It had been a central location for his activities. The notebooks, photographs, and maps found in his storage room painted a picture of someone who had been obsessively tracking the lives of the town's residents, watching and cataloging details that no one would ever suspect. Despite the mounting evidence, the case took an unexpected turn. Victor claimed he had never acted alone. The second notebook found in his home contained twice as many names, some of which belonged to prominent community members. Investigators pursued every lead, but they were unable to prove the existence of any accomplices. Many of the people listed denied involvement, and there was simply not enough evidence to press charges. It became clear that the network Victor hinted at might be far larger and more organized than anyone had imagined. Although Victor was convicted for Daniel Mercer's murder and several other crimes, the trial left the town with more questions than answers. The abandoned house was eventually demolished, and Ridgeway Heights returned to its quiet routine. Yet the residents could never shake the unease left behind by the investigation. The most twisted aspect of the case was not only the murder itself, but the chilling realization that what Daniel Mercer uncovered may have been only a small part of something far darker. The shadows of Ridgeway Heights' secrets lingered long after the trial ended.